All right, it's time for our top stories. This is a fun segment. This is where we try to really pick what was the most impactful stories of the past week or so that really just knocks our socks off. And the big one for us just came out, this whistleblower going to the reporter Brian Krebs. If you're not familiar with Krebs on Security, fantastic website. We use it a lot for reference and trying to understand some things that are happening out there. But Brian Krebs actually had a whistleblower come from Ubiquiti, and they said, hey, Brian, I've got this story you got to hear about, and I'm going to be a whistleblower. I'm going to tell you some crazy stuff that it went down. This breach is a lot bigger than people realize.
Yeah. I think this definitely puts the quit back in Ubiquiti.
It's good. That's good, man. That's a good play on words.
It's brutal, man. Like reading through this, I was like, wow, this is a disaster piece.
No, I think it's a lot bigger than a disaster. You know, to hide this kind of stuff, folks, is wrong. If a breach happens, trying to protect your stock price is the wrong thing to have. So, yeah, I mean, it's important, obviously, but really, if the breach is much bigger than what's expected, the people need to know about it, especially when you're talking about how many different things behind the scenes are connected back to their equipment, their hardware. So this guy, this researcher, Krebs called him Adam. That was his code name. He spoke on the condition of anonymity. I can't pronounce the word for us.
Anonymity. I'm an anemone.
I'm an anemone, right, in the ocean. Dory, Finding Dory. All right, so this researcher, he helped the company Ubiquiti respond, and it was a 2-month response, and he said, you know, I have some concerns, and I'm going to raise it with your whistleblower hotline at Ubiquiti, and they didn't seem to care. And then he said, you know, I'm going to go to the European Data Protection Authorities, I'm going to report this, and then I'm going to go to the news media, specifically Brian Krebs, and he basically said, this is what's happening, which, Forrest, the part of the whistleblowing, and we're going to include the link on here, but the part of the whistleblowing that got me was when Ubiquiti said there was a third party involved.
Oh, yeah. So the third party apparently was just AWS. That was their hosting. Right. And the way that it was worded was so mealy-mouthed, weasel-wordy. It wasn't AWS that was breached. It was just Ubiquiti that just shot themselves in the foot. So, I mean, the extent of the compromise is pretty crazy. Let me just run down the list here.
Yeah, please do, Forrest, because I don't think the audience knows how bad this is.
It is gross. Okay, so first off, attackers had admin access to all of their AWS servers. It impacted their single sign-on, remote access, full source code, and all their signing keys. They had root admin access to all of their AWS accounts, S3 buckets, all their logs, their databases, and user credentials. So basically just meaning that an attacker could access any Ubiquiti device in the world without them. They noticed that several unauthorized VMs were spun up. They didn't specify what those VMs were doing. They had left behind a backdoor. Ubiquiti then found that as part of the incident response. They closed that backdoor, and attackers responded with a 50 Bitcoin ransom to keep quiet about the breach. So they said, give us 50 Bitcoin and we won't say anything. And then Ubiquiti found a second backdoor. And what was really stunning about this was, even though Ubiquiti knew that all of the user credentials were compromised, they didn't they didn't just wipe and force everybody to create new credentials. They waited until the user's next sign-on to have them rotate the credentials.
Brilliant,
so
brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, a window where that compromise happened until the next sign-in, depending on user response. That's a pretty wide window for somebody to then potentially go in and have at your network. That's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and the people that are involved in this that use their product line, I mean, they should be up in arms. You should be saying, you know what? The next chance I get to get off of their equipment, I'm going to do it. And I'm tired of, if you're going to lie to me about a breach and how bad it was, then you don't deserve my trust, you don't deserve my business, and I'm going to move on. So, and there's a lot of options out there. We don't need Ubiquiti in our lives. We want them in our lives, but we don't need them in our lives. So these businesses got to straighten up.
Yeah. It's I really hope that they have learned their lesson from this, and that we see some kind of reform, because honestly, that level of lack of disclosure and misdirection just leaves a terrible taste in my mouth. And I think it's a gross abuse of their customer base.
Yeah, gross abuse of trust.